Nads was no stranger to bizarre situations. A man of peculiar habits and even more peculiar luck, he had survived 3 lightning strikes, a shark attack while on land, and an unfortunate misunderstanding with a professional wrestler named the Pulverizer, but nothing could prepare him for the day that his new neighbor moved in. The house next door had been empty for months, ever since old Mrs. Flanagan had gone to live with her sister, code for her actually winning the lottery and moving to Florida. So when Max saw the moving van pull up one morning, he watched with a mix of curiosity and mild annoyance. He wasn't a fan of people moving into his personal bubble, even if they technically lived on their own property. Then he saw her. She stepped out of the van and Max's jaw nearly unhinged. She was stunning. No, stunning wasn't the right word. Ethereal, otherworldly. Her long, flowing hair seemed to shimmer like sunlight on water, and her smile could melt polar ice caps faster than global warming. She waved at him, and for a moment Max forgot how to wave back. This was unusual because Max Nads prided himself on being impervious to female charms. Years of bad dates, bizarre encounters, and one very clingy ventriloquist had taught him to keep his wits about him. But this woman, this goddess, was something else entirely. Still, Max had a rule. Trust no one, especially if they're nice to you. By evening, the neighbor had introduced herself as Luna, which Max thought was a bit on the nose but didn't say anything. She baked cookies too, the kind that melted in your mouth and probably caused instant addiction. Max's stomach growled as he refused the plate she offered. "Thanks, but I've got a gluten thing," he lied. Luna's eyes flashed momentarily, a flicker of something not quite human, but she smiled sweetly and left. For the next week, Max kept a close eye on her. Something wasn't right. She was too perfect. Her garden bloomed overnight. She didn't recycle. And she hummed, constantly. It was an odd, hypnotic hum that made Max feel like he was drifting into a dream. He'd snap out of it just in time to see her gazing at him from her porch, her head tilted as if studying him. Max's suspicions were confirmed when he saw her dragging a refrigerator-sized box into her basement late one night. He grabbed his binoculars and watched as she hauled it with one hand like it weighed nothing. There was also the matter of her scent. Every time he got close to her, he felt distracted, dizzy even. She smelled like fresh-baked pie, ocean breezes, and a hint of whatever made him happiest. It was unnerving. Finally, one fateful evening, Luna came over to borrow sugar. Max answered the door, clutching a bag of powdered sweetener he didn't remember buying. Before he could ask why she'd need sugar when she clearly never ate anything humanly produced, she leaned in close and whispered, "You're a curious one, Max." That's when the world went black. Max woke up in a dimly lit room that smelled faintly of disinfectant and cookies. His arms were tied behind his back with something that felt like steel cables, but when he glanced down, he realized it was taffy. He gave it a tug and it stretched slightly, then snapped back with a surprising amount of force. "Ah, you're awake!" came Luna's voice. She stepped into view, her shimmering disguise flickering slightly. Beneath the illusion was a creature that looked like a mix between a praying mantis and a supermodel. Her eyes glowed faintly and her hands, no, claws, tapped rhythmically against the console of what Max now realized was her spaceship. "I knew you weren't normal," Max said, struggling against his candy-based restraints. "Flattery will get you nowhere," Luna replied. "Do you know how rare it is to find a human who's both intelligent and deeply paranoid? You're a delicacy, Max, a gourmet meal. I've been tracking your kind for years." "My kind?" "Single men who can't stop overthinking everything. You're like a rare truffle, and now you're mine." Max's mind raced. He'd seen enough episodes of MacGyver to know that every problem had a solution, even if it involved chewing gum and paper clips. He quickly inventoried his pockets. A rusty nail, some dental floss, and a half-chewed piece of gum. Perfect. While Luna monologued about her plans to feast on his mental energy or whatever, Max used his teeth to retrieve the gum and stuck it to the taffy. He then used the nail to puncture a small hole, looped the floss through it, and snap! The taffy restraints broke free. Luna's back was turned as she adjusted some controls, humming that hypnotic tune again. Max crept forward, grabbed a nearby metal rod, and slipped on a puddle of what he could only assume was alien drool. Luna spun around, her eyes narrowing. "You're craftier than I thought. Why do you humans keep trying so hard in the face of defeat?" she said, lunging at him. Max dodged and dove for the nearest lever, pulling it without thinking. Alarms blared, and the ship lurched violently. Luna screeched, momentarily losing her balance. Seizing the opportunity, Max sprinted for the pilot's seat, slammed a button labeled emergency launch, and held on for dear life as the ship shot into the sky. Max didn't know how to fly a spaceship, but he'd seen enough sci-fi movies to know that big buttons were usually bad. He avoided pressing any more, and instead focused on steering. The ship wobbled and sputtered, but managed to break through the atmosphere. "You fool!" Luna shrieked, crawling toward him. "You don't even know what you're doing!" "No, but I'm really good at winging it," Max shot back, jerking the controls to shake her off balance. She tumbled backward, hissing in frustration. Just as Max thought he might actually escape, the ship's communication panel lit up. A voice crackled through the speakers. "This is Commander Zorblax of the Intergalactic Hunters Guild. Identify yourself, intruder." Max panicked and slammed the mute button. Luna laughed maniacally. "You're doomed now," she said. "That's my backup. They'll hunt you down, no matter where you go." Max grinned. "Good thing I've got your ship, then. They'll think I'm you." Luna's eyes widened as realization dawned on her. "You wouldn't dare." "Watch me," Max replied, slamming the hyperspace lever and sending the ship hurtling into the unknown. As stars streaked past the cockpit, Max leaned back and sighed. He had no idea where he was going or how to get back to Earth, but one thing was certain: he wasn't going down without a fight. Luna, now tied up with her own taffy, glared at him from the corner. "You've made a powerful enemy today, Max Nads," she growled. Max smirked. "Yeah, well, get in line." Somewhere in the distance, the Intergalactic Hunters Guild began tracking the rogue ship. Max had no plan, no backup, and no clue what he was doing. But if there was one thing he knew for sure, it was that he'd never let himself become alien Chow. As he rummaged through the ship's compartments, looking for anything useful, he found a stash of alien tech, a holographic map, and what looked like a universal translator. Max grinned. "Let's see what this baby can do," he said, plotting a course for adventure and maybe, just maybe, survival.